At the hospital, I heard my son whisper to the doctor, "Do you think she'll last until Christmas?" I was supposed to be unconscious. I kept my eyes closed and listened to everything. When he left, I opened my eyes and told the nurse exactly what to do next. What happened made him beg on his knees. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching, get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. The monitor beeped a steady, mechanical rhythm beside my ear. I kept my eyes shut, my breathing slow and even. I had practiced this stillness for 2 days, ever since the fog of the initial crisis began to clear. My body was a weak, aching vessel, but my mind was a sharp, cold knife. I heard the door sigh open, the squeak of rubber soles on polished floor. "Any change, doctor?" My son's voice. Marcus. It was edged with a concern that didn't reach his eyes. I knew this, even without seeing him. I knew the particular cadence he used when performing for an audience. Footsteps approached my bed. "Her vitals are stable, Mr. Vance. The pneumonia is responding to the antibiotics." Dr. Lowell's tone was professional, detached. A clipboard rustled. "But at her age and with her heart history, recovery will be slow. She's very weak." A pause. I could feel Marcus shift his weight. I imagined him looking at me, not seeing a mother but an obstacle, a delay. "Slow," Marcus repeated, the word flat. "How slow? I mean, we're 2 weeks from Christmas." My heart did not flutter. It clenched, a hard, cold fist in my chest. I concentrated on the beeping monitor, forcing my breath to remain shallow. "It's difficult to predict a timeline," Dr. Lowell said. I heard the faintest hint of weariness. He had seen this before, the impatient relatives. Then Marcus spoke again, his voice lower, confidential. A man sharing a practical burden with another man. "Look, I'm just trying to manage things. The estate, the house, all her affairs are tangled. I need to know what to prepare for." He let that hang for a second. "Do you think she'll last until Christmas?" The air in the room vanished. The beeping monitor seemed to grow distant, replaced by a roaring silence in my ears. Every ache in my body crystallized into a single point of absolute clarity. He was not asking if I would recover by Christmas. He was asking if I would die by then. He was checking a deadline. Dr. Lowell cleared his throat, a subtle sound of discomfort. "As I said, Mr. Vance, it's impossible to say. She could stabilize further. She could face a complication. My focus is on her care, not a prediction." "Right, of course." Marcus's tone was smooth again, dismissing the doctor's discomfort. "It's just a lot, you understand. I'll be back tomorrow." I listened to the doctor's footsteps retreat, then the door closing. I was alone with my son. I expected him to perhaps sit to side to say something to my unconscious form, a false apology, a rehearsed monologue. He did none of those things. I heard the soft click of his phone being unlocked, a few swift taps. Then he murmured to himself, a low, satisfied hum. "Just hold on, old girl, 2 more weeks, tie up the loose ends." His footsteps moved across the room, pausing by the small mirror on the wall. I could picture him checking his reflection, adjusting the knot of his tie, the expensive one I bought him last birthday. He was handsome, my son. He had his father's smile. Or he used to, before it became a tool. The door opened and closed again. His footsteps faded down the corridor. The cold in my chest spread, traveling through my veins like ice water. It was not grief. Grief is a hot, messy thing. This was colder and cleaner. It was confirmation. The final, irrevocable proof of a suspicion I had spent years smothering with excuses. His lost jobs were bad luck. His constant requests for loans were temporary setbacks. His resentment of my careful, quiet life was just a son straining against a parent. I had built a comfortable life from nothing, from long shifts and saved coupons and the quiet loneliness after Robert died. I built it for us, for him, and he saw it only as a vault and me as its failing lock. I lay there in the sterile silence, the smell of antiseptic and illness thick in my nose. The starch of the sheets chafed my skin. I thought of my house, my tidy living room with the bookshelves Robert built, the kitchen where I taught Marcus to make pancakes, the garden I tended. He was in that house now, probably, measuring the walls, calculating. A slow, deliberate breath filled my lungs. It hurt, a deep ache in my ribs. I held it. Then I let it out. I opened my eyes. The ceiling was white and pitted with acoustic tiles. A fluorescent light was off, but daylight seeped in from a closed blind. I turned my head, a movement that required significant effort. The room was standard, impersonal. A chair in the corner, a window, my purse on the narrow cabinet, untouched. The monitor continued its steady beep. My heart rate, I noticed, had not spiked. It remained steady. I felt a strange, detached calm. The shock had broken over me, and now it was receding, leaving behind a landscape stripped bare. All the softness, the hope, the maternal forgiveness was gone, eroded. What remained was bedrock. He wanted an answer to his question. Do you think she'll last until Christmas? I would give him one. It would not be the answer he expected. He saw a frail, dying woman, a passive entity. He did not see a leaner Vance. He did not see the woman who worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over his head, who fought the bank to keep the house after Robert's heart attack, who learned to fix a leaking faucet and negotiate a car price and read the fine print on every document. He saw gray-streaked hair and papery skin. He did not see the mind that remembered every detail, that planned, that endured. A plan did not form fully then. It was a single, solid intention, a direction. He had set a deadline. I would use the time. My eyes moved to the door. It would open again. Nurses came on a schedule. I needed one of them. Not just any nurse. I needed an ally. I would have to be careful. I would have to judge character quickly and accurately. My life, or at least the life I had built, depended on it. The first step was to stop pretending to be completely unconscious. I needed to be seen as minimally responsive, a woman drifting in and out. That would explain later clarity. It would lower his guard. Marcus would hear that his mother was slipping in and out of a haze. He would find it convenient, hopeful even. I let my eyes close again, but not to hide, to think, to prepare. I listened to the sounds of the hospital, a distant page, a cart rolling by, the low murmur of a television from another room. These were the sounds of my new battlefield. This sterile, scentless room was my command post. I thought of Robert. He was a gentle man, but a pragmatic one. When someone shows you who they are, Ellie, he used to say, believe them the first time. I had not wanted to believe what Marcus was showing me. Now I had no choice. The hurt was a luxury I could not afford. It was a weight that would drown me, so I let it sink. I pushed it down into the dark, cold water of my new resolve. What floated to the surface was clarity, purpose. I would last until Christmas, and so would he. We would see which of us was better prepared for the season. The next sound was the deliberate swish of the curtain being drawn around my bed, blocking the view from the door. Then a soft click as the room's main light was turned off, leaving only the dim glow from behind the bed. Tactical movements. Considerate. I kept my eyes closed but allowed my breathing to alter slightly, a faint catch as I exhaled. Mrs. Vance. The voice was low, firm, and close. It's Rita, Nurse Johnson. I'm going to check your vitals and adjust your IV. I felt a warm, capable hand take my wrist, fingers finding my pulse. She held it for a full minute, counting silently. Her touch was neither rushed nor overly gentle. It was efficient, professional. I waited until she was nodding something on the chart at the foot of my bed. With a conscious effort, I let my eyelids flutter open. I focused on the ceiling for a moment, then slowly, laboriously turned my head toward her. She was in her 40s, with a strong, calm face and observant eyes that immediately met mine. She didn't startle or gasp. She simply stopped writing and took a step closer, her head tilting. Well, hello there, she said, her voice still quiet. Welcome back. Do you know where you are? I tried to speak. My throat was a desert. I managed a faint rasp. She was already holding a cup with a bent straw. She brought it to my lips. Small sips, just wet your throat. The water was cool. It hurt to swallow, but the relief was immediate. I drew back from the straw and found my voice, though it was a stranger's, dry and cracked. Hospital, I know. She nodded, setting the cup aside. Good, you've been in and out for a few days. Pneumonia, you're on the mend, but you need rest. She studied me, and I saw the assessment in her eyes. She was nodding my alertness, the clarity in my gaze. Do you remember your son being here? I held her look. I remember he was here earlier with the doctor. A slight narrowing of her eyes. She had been my primary nurse for 2 shifts. She knew the timeline. She knew my son had left hours ago and the doctor's round was before that. He was here this afternoon, she confirmed, her tone neutral. I heard him, I said. The words were clear now. I put every ounce of my remaining strength into making them precise. I heard him ask the doctor if I would last until Christmas. Nurse Rita Johnson went very still. Her professional mask didn't slip, but something shifted behind her eyes. A hardening. A recognition. She had heard such things before. She glanced toward the closed curtain, then back at me. I see, she said, the 2 words holding a universe of understanding. He thinks I'm unconscious, I continued. My energy was waning, but this was the crucial moment. I had to establish the truth, and I had to judge her. He is waiting for me to die. He has plans for my house, my money. Mrs. Vance. Aliner, I corrected. My name is Aliner. I needed this to be personal, not a patient, but a person. Aliner, she said, testing the name. She pulled the visitor's chair close to the bed and sat down, leaning in. Her posture was not of a nurse to a patient, but of one woman to another. What you heard, it's not my place to comment on family matters, but I am here for your care. My care, I repeated. I took another slow breath. My care requires that he continues to believe I am unaware, that I am fatting. It requires that I have someone who can help me. She didn't ask what kind of help. She waited. I am not a wealthy woman, I said, my eyes locked on hers. But I have a home, I have savings. They are the product of a lifetime of work. My husband's work, my work. They are not for him, not anymore. I saw no judgment in her face, only a steady attention. I need to secure them. I need to make legal changes. I cannot do it from this bed, not alone. The silence that followed was thick. The beeping monitor marked the seconds. She was weighing her duty, her ethics, against what she saw in front of her, a lucid, betrayed woman. I could see the decision forming. It was in the set of her jaw, the slight nod she gave to herself. What is it you think I can do? She asked finally. Her voice was barely a whisper. You can be my eyes, my ears. You can take messages. You can bring me things. You can tell me what he says when he thinks no one is listening. I paused, gathering the last of my strength for the most important part. And you can help me find out if I can trust you to do this. I have no room for error. A faint, grim smile touched her lips. You're asking me to spy on your son. I am asking you to help me protect myself from a predator, I stated flatly. The law will be on my side. The morality is clear. The only deception is letting him believe his own lie for a little while longer. She looked down at her hands, then back at me. I have a mother, in Georgia. She's about your age. If I were in that bed and my brother was at the door counting her days... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. What's the first thing you need? The tension in my chest, a band I had not even fully acknowledged, loosened a fraction. This was not yet trust, but it was a pact, a conditional alliance. A pen and paper from my purse, and I need you to listen. Tomorrow, when he visits, he will perform for you. He will be the devoted son. Note what he says, the specifics, the details he lets slip. She stood, retrieved my small notebook and a pen from my purse. She placed them on the bedside table, within my weak reach. I can do that. Thank you, Rita. Don't thank me yet, she said, her tone practical again. She adjusted my blanket, a normal nursing gesture for anyone watching. You need to rest now. Actually rest. You'll need your strength. I'll be back at 11 for your medication. We'll talk then. She gave my arm a brief, solid pat, a gesture of solidarity, not pity, and slipped back through the curtain. I heard her wheel the vital signs cart away, her footsteps fading. I looked at the notebook and pen. Tools, my first weapons. The room was still cold, still sterile, but it no longer felt like a prison cell. It felt like a headquarters. The first piece of the structure was in place. I had an ally. The war would not be fought with shouts or violence, but with paperwork, with legal clauses, with the quiet, patient withdrawal of expectation. And it would begin with the careful, documented words of a greedy son, delivered to me by a nurse with a mother in Georgia. I closed my eyes, but this time it was to plan. True to her word, Rita returned at 11. The ward was quiet, the night shift settled into its routine. She drew the curtain again and sat, pulling a small folder from the pocket of her scrubs. She didn't speak immediately, instead watching me gather myself. I pushed against the pillows, wincing at the protest in my muscles until I was more upright. The act of moving was a message. I was present. I was engaged. He came by the nurse's station before he left, she began, her voice low and even. Asked detailed questions about your prognosis, not about your comfort, but about timelines. He mentioned needing to freeze some assets and whether a death certificate would be required before probate. She opened the folder. It contained a few sheets of blank hospital notepaper. I wrote down what I remembered, word for word, as best I could. She handed me the top sheet. My hands trembled slightly, but I focused. The handwriting was neat, clinical. Asked Dr. Lowell's direct extension. Wanted to know if a private nurse for end-stage care would be deductible from the estate. Mentioned a real estate agent named Carl had called him about a market assessment. Said, "The faster we wrap this up, the better for everyone." The words were not a shock. They were evidence, cold, hard data points. I placed the paper on the blanket beside me. "Thank you, this is exactly what I need." "What now?" Rita asked. She had a pen ready. "Now we write," I said. I closed my eyes for a moment, marshaling my thoughts. The legal language needed to be precise, but the intent had to be unmistakable. First, a letter to my attorney, Lawrence Jenkins. Head it, "Urgent to be hand-delivered by trusted courier." Rita began to write, her pen scratching steadily. "Dear Lawrence," I dictated, "I am writing from my hospital bed at Fairview General. My health is poor, but my mind is clear. This clarity has been forced upon me by my son's actions. I have reason to believe Marcus is anticipating my imminent death and is taking steps to assume control of my estate for his sole benefit. I need to act to secure my assets immediately. I am currently feigning a more severe incapacity to gather evidence and to prevent him from interfering. The nurse delivering this letter, Rita Johnson, is acting under my direct instructions and has my full confidence. I need you to visit me here as soon as possible, under a plausible pretext, to discuss and execute changes to my will and to my power of attorney. Please bring the relevant documents. Time is of the essence. Sincerely, Alina Vance." Rita wrote without pause. When she finished, she read it back to me. Every word was correct. "He's your longtime lawyer?" she asked. "For 30 years. He handled Robert's will. He is trustworthy. He will be discreet." I took a sip of water. "Next, I need a list of documents from my home. The small fireproof safe in the bottom of my bedroom closet. The combination is my wedding date, 10/03/82. She noted it. "Inside, you will find a manila envelope. It contains the deed to the house, the original of my current will, the titles to my car, and my investment portfolio statements from Franklin Mutual. There is also a small jewelry box with a few pieces. Bring me the entire envelope and the box. Do not let Marcus see you. He may be staying at the house." "I can go on my break tomorrow afternoon," Rita said. "I have your keys in your personal effects bag. What if he's there?" "Then you do not enter. Your safety and discretion are paramount. We find another way, but I do not think he will be. He dislikes being there alone. He finds it stifling. He will likely be at his apartment or with his friends, celebrating his impending windfall." The bitterness in that statement was a dry, flavorless thing, a fact, not a feeling. She nodded, making another note. "And the new will." I had thought of little else in the hours between. The current will leaves everything to Marcus, with a small bequest to the city library. I wish to revoke it entirely. The new will leave my entire estate, save for one specific item, to a trust. The trust will be for my own maintenance and care for the remainder of my life. Upon my death, the remaining assets will be liquidated and donated to the Fairview Community Women's Shelter. I saw Rita's pen stop for a second before resuming. "The sole specific item I will leave to Marcus is the photograph of his father and me that sits on the mantel. The frame is a nice one. He can have that." Rita didn't comment. Her face was a mask of concentration. "For the power of attorney," I continued, "I want to grant a limited, durable power to you, Rita Johnson, to act on my behalf in medical and specific financial matters, only for the duration of this hospitalization and any subsequent rehabilitation. Lawrence will know the exact language. It will allow you to access accounts to pay my bills and to speak to doctors, but not to alter my estate plan. It will also give you the legal standing to keep Marcus from making any decisions on my behalf. She looked up, her eyes wide. Me, Eleanor, I'm a nurse. I don't know anything about. You know about integrity, I interrupted. And you will have Lawrence to guide you on the legalities. I need someone he cannot intimidate, someone with no prior relationship to him. You are the only person I can trust right now. She held my gaze for a long moment, then gave a single firm nod. All right, I'll do it. We are not doing anything illegal, I said, more for my own reassurance than hers. We are protecting an elderly woman from financial exploitation. The law will see it that way. He has simply provided the motivation. The next hour was spent refining the lists, going over the details. Rita's questions were practical. Where exactly was the safe hidden behind the clothes? What was the name of Lawrence's firm? Did I have online banking passwords? My weakness returned as we worked, a heavy fog threatening to descend. But the act of dictation, of seeing the plan take physical form on paper, was a potent stimulant. Each written line was a brick in a wall I was building between Marcus and everything I held dear. The wall was made of legalese, of bank account numbers, of a nurse's honest handwriting. Finally, Rita gathered the papers. The letter to Lawrence was folded into a blank hospital envelope. The list for the safe was in her pocket. I'll call his office first thing in the morning, she said. I'll deliver the letter personally on my way home, then I'll go to your house in the afternoon. Be careful, I said, the words thick with fatigue. You get some sleep, she replied, her tone returning to its professional warmth. You have a busy day tomorrow, meetings to arrange, fortunes to unravel. The ghost of a smile touched her lips before she slipped away. Alone again, I looked at my hands on the white blanket. They were thin, veins prominent, old hands. But tonight they had wielded a pen, if only by proxy. They had begun the work of reclamation. The physical trembling was still there, but beneath it was a new solidity. The blueprint was drawn. The foundation was being dug. The house that Marcus thought he was about to inherit was, board by legal board, being deconstructed right under his feet. And he was oblivious, counting his future riches in a home that was, with every passing minute, ceasing to be his. The morning passed with the slow, measured rhythm of hospital routine. Rita had been in before her shift ended, her face giving away nothing until the curtain was drawn. Then a quick, tight smile. Jenkins's office confirmed for 3 p.m. today. He's coming as a family friend. The envelope is safe. She didn't mention the house, and I didn't ask. Some things were better communicated without words. Her calm demeanor told me all I needed to know. The operation was in motion. I spent the hours practicing my stillness, conserving my energy for the lawyer's visit. But first, I had another performance to endure. Marcus arrived just after 1, timing his visit, I was sure, to coincide with the nursing shift change, a busier, more public time. I heard him before I saw him, his voice a polished, concerned tenor in the hallway. Just hopping for any sign of improvement. It's so hard to see her like this. The nurse at the station murmured something sympathetic. Then he was in the room, bringing with him the faint scent of his cologne, something expensive and sharp. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing the slow, shallow pattern I had perfected. I heard him set something down on the bedside table, a rustle of paper. Hey, Mom, he said, his voice dropping to a softer, more intimate register meant for an audience of one. He pulled the chair close. I could feel his presence, a disruption in the sterile air. Just came from the house, picked up your mail, lots of get well cards. He sighed, a heavy, practiced sound. I watered your fern, looks a little dry. He was silent for a moment. I imagined him looking around, perhaps at the monitors, perhaps at my face, seeing only what he wanted to see, an end to his waiting. You know, he said, his tone shifting to something conversational, confiding, being in the house really makes me think. All those years, you and Dad scraping everything together for that place. Another pause. I could almost hear the calculations behind his eyes. It's a good asset, solid. Carl, you remember Carl from the dealership. He says in this market we could get a really clean number for it. No fuss. A quick sale would settle everything. My heart did not race. I concentrated on the beep of the monitor, a metronome for my composure. He was talking to a ghost, laying out his plans to the empty air. It's just the timing is a nightmare, honestly. His voice took on a petulant edge, the one I remembered from a teenager denied a new car. My lease is up at the end of the month, the landlord's being a jerk about renewal, and the credit card companies, well, let's just say they've lost their sense of humor. I was counting on that bonus from the Henderson account, but that fell through. Again. He leaned closer. I could feel his breath. It's not like you need it, Mom. You're not going to be there. And I have my life to live. You'd want me to be secure, right? That's what you and Dad always wanted. He said it with such conviction, as if stating a natural law. My lifetime of work, Robert's legacy, reduced to an inconvenient obstacle to his lease renewal. He stood up abruptly, the chair legs scraping the floor. I heard him pace to the window, then back. I talked to the bank yesterday, he continued, now speaking more to himself. Just preliminarily, about probate. They said with a death certificate and the will, it could be pretty straightforward. A few weeks, maybe, just have to get through the holidays. He said the last word with a peculiar blend of hope and irritation. He came back to the bedside. I felt his hand pat mine, a dry, brief touch, no warmth. It was an administrative gesture. You hang in there, okay? But don't drag it out. It's not good for anyone. The words were spoken softly, almost kindly. The ultimate betrayal dressed as merciful advice. I heard him gather his things, the rustle of the mail he'd brought. He paused at the door. Love you, Mom, he said, the automatic sign-off hollow in the quiet room. Then he was gone, his footsteps retreating down the hall. I waited a full 5 minutes before I let my shoulders relax a fraction against the pillows. My hand, where he had patted it, felt cold. His confession had been more thorough than I could have hoped. He had provided a motive, a timeline, and a moral justification all in one monologue. The real estate agent, the lease, the credit cards, the bank inquiry. He was moving swiftly, a man tidying up loose ends. A clean number, a quick sale, settle everything. My eyes opened, fixed on the acoustic tiles of the ceiling. The cold fury was there, but it was a tool now, a source of fuel. He saw my life as a checklist to be finalized. He saw my home as an asset to be liquidated. He saw my death as a logistical event to be managed. But I was not a checklist. I was the author, and I was writing a different ending. His words, spoken to the silence, were now my ammunition. Lawrence Jenkins would hear them. A judge, if it ever came to that, would hear them. The narrative was no longer his to control. Rita slipped in 20 minutes later. She said nothing, just raised an eyebrow in question as she checked my IV line. He visited, I said, my voice low but clear. He discussed selling the house to cover his debts. He has spoken to the bank about probate. He told me not to drag it out. She didn't flinch. She simply gave a slow, understanding nod as she noted something on my chart. Mr. Jenkins is on his way, she said quietly. He called from the parking lot. He'll be up in 10 minutes. Good, I said. I flexed my fingers, feeling a surge of purpose that momentarily overshadowed the physical weakness. The performance was over. Now it was time for the meeting. The son had delivered his soliloquy. Now the mother would consult with her counsel. The pieces he had so carelessly revealed would be fitted into a structure of my own design, one that left him securely on the outside, looking in at the life he thought he was about to inherit. He arrived precisely at 3, a leather briefcase in hand and a somber, appropriate expression on his face. Lawrence Jenkins had aged since I last saw him at Robert's small estate reading, but his eyes were the same, sharp, gray, and missing nothing. He wore a dark overcoat over his suit, the picture of a concerned friend paying a visit. "Eleanor," he said, his voice a low rumble as he approached the bed. He took my hand, his grip firm and warm. It was a genuine gesture, one that acknowledged me as a person, not a patient. I came as soon as I could. "Thank you, Lawrence," I said. My voice was stronger than it had been. The importance of this moment acted as a tonic. "This is Rita Johnson, my nurse. She is assisting me." He turned and gave Rita a polite, assessing nod. "Nurse Johnson, your discretion is appreciated," I'll be outside the curtain, Rita said. I'll make sure you're not disturbed. She slipped out, leaving us in our private enclave. Lawrence set his briefcase on the chair and opened it. He pulled out a legal pad and a pen, then looked at me directly. Your letter was clear. The nurse's summary of events was illuminating. Tell me everything from the beginning. Leave nothing out. I told him. I recounted the first words I heard, the Christmas deadline. I repeated Marcus's hallway performance for the doctors, his solo monologue from today, the house, the debts, the bank inquiry, his advice not to drag it out. I spoke calmly, factually. I presented it not as an emotional plea, but as a legal problem, a case of impending financial exploitation. Lawrence listened without interruption, his pen jotting occasional notes. When I finished, he let out a long, slow breath. I am so sorry, Alina. This is a profound betrayal. It is a situation that requires a legal solution, I replied, steering us back to practicality. Sentiment is a luxury I cannot afford. He nodded, understanding. All right, we proceed on two fronts. First, testamentary capacity. We must establish unequivocally that you are of sound mind at the time of altering your will. Given your hospitalization, Marcus could contest it, arguing you were under duress or impaired. He looked at me. Are you prepared to be evaluated by a doctor of my choosing, today, to create a contemporaneous medical record of your lucidity? Yes, I said without hesitation. Good, I've already made a call. A colleague, Dr. Evans, is on standby. She can be here within the hour. She will ask you standard cognitive questions. You will answer them. He made a note. Second, the documents themselves. He pulled a thin stack of papers from his briefcase. I have prepared a new last will and testament, revoking all prior versions as you directed. It establishes a living trust for your benefit, with the remainder to the women's shelter. The specific bequest of the photograph is included. He placed it before me. The language was dense, formal. I scanned the key clauses, my name, the revocation, the trust, the shelter. It was all there. And the power of attorney. He produced another document. This is a limited durable power of attorney. It grants Nurse Johnson authority to manage your medical decisions and access specified financial accounts for the sole purpose of paying your bills and managing your affairs during this period of incapacitation. It explicitly prohibits any alteration to your estate plan or gifting of assets. It expires upon your written revocation or upon your full recovery, as certified by a physician. He pointed to a section. It names you as the principal, Rita Johnson as the agent, and me as the successor agent should she be unable to serve. It is a shield, not a sword. It was precisely what I had wanted. And Marcus, his current status. As of now, he has no legal standing. You have not granted him any power of attorney. He is merely your next of kin, which grants him no financial rights. However, if you were declared incompetent, he could petition the court for guardianship. This document, he tapped the power of attorney, along with the medical evaluation, preempts that. It shows you have chosen a capable agent while retaining your own faculties. Then let us begin, I said. The signing was a deliberate physical act. Lawrence positioned a bed tray over my lap. He explained each document page by page, his finger under each line. He asked me to state aloud that I understood its contents, that I was acting of my own free will, that no one was coercing me. I stated it all clearly, for the record he was surely making. I signed my name, Alina Vance *, on each designated line. The pen felt heavy, but my signature was steady, a match to the one on my driver's license, which he produced from my purse for comparison. He signed as witness, then called Rita in to sign as the second witness and to sign her acceptance as agent on the power of attorney. Her hand was steady, her face serious. When the last signature was dry, Lawrence notarized the documents with his portable seal. The sound of the embosser pressing into the paper was final, concrete. It's done, he said, carefully organizing the originals into his briefcase. I will file the will with the probate court first thing tomorrow. It will be on record. The power of attorney is effective immediately. I will provide certified copies to Nurse Johnson and to the hospital administration. I will also send a formal letter to Marcus, at his apartment address, informing him that you have executed a new power of attorney appointing Ms. Johnson, due to his geographic distance and preoccupation with his own affairs. It will be courteous and unassailable. A thin sliver of relief, cold and clean, passed through me. Thank you, Lawrence. There is more to do, he said, closing his briefcase. The financial snare, as you put it. Nurse Johnson, under this power, can begin moving liquid assets to new accounts. We should also secure the deed to the house. Do you have it? Rita retrieved it today, I said. It's here. Rita produced the manila envelope from her bag. Lawrence took it, glanced inside, and nodded. Good. I'll place this in my office safe. Marcus cannot sell what he cannot access. He stood, his expression one of professional resolve. Rest now, Aliner. The machinery is in motion. He will not know what has happened until it is far too late for him to intervene. He shook my hand again, nodded to Rita, and left as quietly as he had come. The room felt different. The air was no longer thick with vulnerability. It was charged with settled intent. The law was no longer a potential weapon for Marcus. It was now armor I had put on, piece by piece, signed and notarized. My son had been speaking to banks about probate. I had just made his inquiries irrelevant. The first legal stroke was complete, and it had drawn a line around everything I valued, a boundary he would now find impossible to cross. The documents were signed, the legal framework erected. Now came the practical, granular work of moving money. My world shrank further to the bed, the IV pole, and the lists Rita and I compiled. Lawrence had left a package of paperwork, bank transfer forms, letters of instruction, all requiring the signature of my legally appointed agent, Rita Johnson, under the power of attorney. The next morning, Rita arrived with a large tote bag and a thermos of strong tea. Jenkins dropped these off last night, she said, laying out the forms on my bed tray. We need to identify every account, every asset. We started with the checking and savings accounts at First Mutual, where Robert and I had banked for 30 years. I recited the account numbers from memory. I listed the Franklin Mutual Investment Account, the modest IRA, the money market fund. It was not a vast fortune, but it was stability. It was the result of 1,000 small denials and 1,000 careful decisions. It was my safety. The goal, I instructed, is not to hide the money, but to move it. To new accounts at a different institution, United Security Bank. Lawrence has already opened them in my name. You will present the power of attorney, your identification, and these transfer forms. The money will be wired or transferred via cashier's check. The old accounts will be left open with a nominal balance. We do not want to trigger alarm bells at the bank that might lead a curious customer service representative to inform Marcus, who is still listed as a beneficiary on those old accounts. Rita wrote everything down, her brow furrowed in concentration. This was far outside her normal duties, but she approached it with the same methodical care she used for a medication schedule. And the house, the deed is with Jenkins. The deed is secure, but we must also ensure Marcus cannot take out a loan against it. Lawrence will place a caveat or a notice on the title, alerting any lender that there is a dispute. He is handling that. Your task is the liquid assets, the cash he is counting on to solve his problems. She spent the next 2 days on her breaks, and after her shifts becoming a familiar face at United Security Bank and at the offices of Franklin Mutual. I received reports in our whispered conferences. The bank manager, a Mrs. Ellis, had been cautious at first, scrutinizing the power of attorney and calling Lawrence Jenkins for verification. But once satisfied, she was efficient. The transfers were initiated. The money market is done, Rita reported one evening, looking tired but satisfied. The IRA is trickier, tax implications. Jenkins said to leave it for now, but we've changed the beneficiary to the trust. The checking and savings are moving, should be complete by Friday. Each piece of information was a brick in a wall. I could visualize the numbers, the sums leaving one column and arriving in another, severing the invisible threads that connected Marcus to my labor. He had spoken of my assets being tangled. I was systematically untangling them from his grasp. On the third day, Rita brought a new piece of intelligence. He called the hospital billing department, she said, her voice low. Posed as you at first, then as your son. Wanted an itemized bill and an estimate of total costs to date. He asked if the estate would be liable if you passed away before it was paid. I nodded. He was calculating the liabilities against the assets. He was building his own spreadsheets. Let him have the estimates, I said. It will only make the final revelation more stark. The most delicate operation concerned my physical home. While the deed was safe, Marcus still had a key and free access. He was, as I predicted, using it as a staging ground. Rita, on one of her authorized visits to collect my mail and water the plants, had done a quiet inspection. There are measuring tapes on the kitchen counter, she told me, and a notepad with what look like real estate agent numbers. He's been there. He's planning the sale. Is anything missing? I asked, a sudden irrational fear seizing me. Not for the value, but for the memories, Robert's books, my mother's china. Not that I could see. The photo on the mantel is still there. She meant the one I had left him. The irony was not lost on either of us. But a leaner, he's comfortable there. He's acting like it's already his. That ends soon, I said. Lawrence's letter informing him of the power of attorney will arrive any day. That will be his first shock. The financial silence will be the second. The final transfer, the bulk of my savings, cleared on Friday afternoon. Rita brought the confirmation slips from United Security Bank. The numbers were all there, settled into new accounts with new numbers, accessible only to me and, for now, to my agent under strict limitations. The old accounts at First Mutual held exactly $100 each, empty shells. That evening, as Rita prepared to leave, we reviewed the status. The will was filed. The power of attorney was active and on record at the hospital. The money was moved. The deed was under lock and key with a legal warning attached to it. The financial snare was no longer a plan. It was a completed fact. He's going to call the bank soon, I said, not with anxiety, but with clinical prediction. He'll want to check balances to start his planning in earnest, and he will find a desert where he expected an oasis. Rita zipped up her tote bag, the sound final. What will he do then? He will panic, I said. A man who sees his solution evaporating will become desperate. He will make mistakes. He will come here looking for answers, for leverage, for a way to reassert control. I looked toward the door of my room. And we will be ready for him. The trap is not just the missing money, Rita. It is his own reaction to it. We have shifted the ground beneath his feet. Now we wait for him to stumble. She nodded, understanding the next phase. The legal and financial work was defensive. What came next would be the deliberate provocation. The stage was set. The props, the beeping monitors, the frail body in the bed, the illusion of helplessness were all in place. We had only to wait for the actor to arrive for his final, desperate scene. The following morning, the plan entered its active phase. It was no longer about building defenses, but about laying bait. Rita arrived with a determined set to her shoulders. Jenkins's letter arrived at Marcus's apartment yesterday, she reported. He signed for it at 4:15 p.m. He hasn't called the hospital or come by. Silence. He's processing, I said. The power of attorney will confuse him. He'll try to call Jenkins, who will give him only the barest formal explanation. Then he will call the bank. That will be the true shock. Today, we add pressure. I had rehearsed the scenario with Rita. It required timing and a natural performance. Dr. Lowell made his rounds mid-morning. Rita intercepted him in the hallway, just outside my partially closed door. I, of course, was in my usual state of feigned semi-consciousness, but my ears were sharp. The stage was set. Doctor, a quick word about Mrs. Vance, Rita asked, her nurse's voice pitched to carry just enough. Of course, Dr. Lowell replied. I heard them stop right by the door. Her vitals have shown notable improvement over the last 48 hours, Rita said, reading from a chart. The congestion is clearing. She's responding well to the new antibiotic. That's encouraging, Dr. Lowell said, his tone genuinely pleased. She's a fighter. We might be turning a corner. But there are new concerns, Rita continued, lowering her voice just a fraction into a more confidential register. I could picture her leaning in. Given her age and the underlying heart condition, even if we beat the pneumonia, The recovery will be long. She'll likely need extensive rehabilitation, possibly a transfer to a long-term care facility for physical therapy and monitoring. We're looking at months, not weeks. A perfectly placed, heavy sigh from Dr. Lowell. Yes, I've been considering that. It's the prudent path. Those facilities are excellent, but they are not inexpensive. The cost, even with insurance, can be significant. It will be a considerable draw on her resources. Has the family discussed financial planning for extended care? The son has been focused on the immediate crisis, Rita said, a delicate pause in her words. I'm not sure he's aware of the long-term financial implications. He may be under the impression that, that the situation was more acute. We need to manage expectations, Dr. Lowell said, his voice taking on a grave, professional tone. She is stabilizing. She is not out of the woods, but death is not imminent. The real challenge now is the quality of her recovery, and that comes with a steep, ongoing price tag. The estate needs to be prepared for a drain, not a windfall. They allowed a moment of silence to hang in the air. I listened with a detached approval. They had hit every note: stabilization, long-term care, financial drain. It was a beautiful, cruel piece of theater. Then a sound. A faint scuff of a shoe on linoleum from the hallway beyond my line of sight. It was followed by a sharp, indrawn breath, too quick, too harsh to be a nurse or orderly. Then rapid, retreating footsteps. Rita and Dr. Lowell exchanged a few more muted words about medication, then their footsteps moved away down the hall. The curtain around my bed swayed slightly a minute later as Rita entered. She didn't speak, just raised her eyebrows and gave a small, sharp nod toward the door. He was there, I stated. He was there, she confirmed, her voice a whisper. I saw his shadow just as we finished. He heard it all. He looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. He turned and almost ran. I closed my eyes, not in weakness, but in focus. The bait had been taken. The news of my stabilization would have been a disappointment. The news that my survival would now actively consume the inheritance he saw as his salvation would be a catastrophe. His calculations were upended. His deadline was meaningless. The asset had become a liability. Now we wait for his move, I said. We did not have to wait long. My room phone, which had been silent, rang just after 2 o'clock. Rita, who was checking my IV, answered it with a neutral, Mrs. Vance's room. I could hear the tinny, agitated buzz of a voice on the other end. Rita's face remained impassive. I'm sorry, Mr. Vance. Only her appointed medical power of attorney can discuss her condition or care plans. You should direct any questions to Mr. Lawrence Jenkins's office. Yes, I understand. No, I cannot make an exception. Hospital policy. She listened for another few seconds. You are, of course, welcome to visit during regular hours. Goodbye. She hung up. He's furious, demanding to know who I am and by what authority I'm here. He said Jenkins's office told him it was a private family matter and to refer to the documents he received. Good, I said. The walls were closing in on him, and he was realizing they were not of his making. His visit that evening was different. There was no performance for the nurse's station. He strode down the hallway, his footsteps loud and quick. He pushed my door open without knocking. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing shallow, but I felt the change in the air. It was charged with panic and anger. He didn't sit. He stood at the foot of the bed, a looming presence. For a long time, he was silent. I could feel his gaze on me, no longer the look of a man waiting for a payout, but of a man surveying a ruined plan. What are you playing at? He hissed, the words meant for me even though he thought I couldn't hear. A nurse, a power of attorney, and now you're going to live just long enough to spend it all. His voice trembled with a mixture of rage and desperation. This isn't how it's supposed to go. He paced to the window, then back. I have debts. I have commitments. You were supposed to make things right. The entitlement in that statement was breathtaking. My death was an obligation I was failing to fulfill. He stopped near the bedside table, his hand hovering over the call button, over the array of medication ports on my IV line. The thought, dark and sudden, flashed in the room. I knew it. He was considering it. A swift, silent intervention to correct the course of his destiny. but he pulled his hand back as if burned. He wasn't a killer. He was a calculator. Violence was messy, risky. He wanted a clean, legal transaction. My continued life had made things messy. He left a short time later, his exit less assured than his entrance. The door clicked shut. I opened my eyes, staring at the spot where he had stood. The trap was not just set, it had been sprung. He was well and truly caught in the dilemma of my survival. The next move was mine. The performance of weakness was nearly over. It was almost time for the reveal. He returned the next day. His panic had cooled into a more focused, dangerous energy. I heard him at the nurse's station, his voice clipped and polite, asking for an update. He was told again that only my designated power of attorney could receive medical information. He accepted this with a tight "I see" and walked toward my room. This time he entered with a different purpose. The door shut softly behind him. He did not pace. He stood just inside the room, surveying it, his eyes moving from the monitors to the IV stand to my still form in the bed. He was dressed less formally today, as if he had given up on maintaining certain appearances. He approached the bed slowly. I sensed him studying my face. My breathing was steady, my eyes closed. I had decided the moment would be when he was closest, when his sense of security was greatest. He leaned over the bed rail, his shadow falling across me. I could smell his cologne again, mixed with the scent of stale coffee. He was examining the IV line, the medication bag. His fingers brushed the plastic clamp regulating the flow. It was a thoughtful, speculative gesture. He was not checking on me. He was assessing the apparatus. A man looking at the wiring of a machine that had failed to perform as expected. "Mom," he said, his voice low. It held no warmth, only a testing quality. "Can you hear me?" I did not respond. I let him have the silence. He sighed, a sound of profound irritation. "This is getting complicated," he murmured, more to himself than to me. His hand left the IV clamp and came to rest on the side rail near my shoulder. "That nurse, that lawyer, they're boxing me out. Do you have any idea what you've done? That money, it was supposed to fix things. Now they're saying you'll live for years in some home, spending every last dime." His voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "That's not fair. After everything I've waited for. After everything I've put up with." His words hung in the sterile air. This was the core of it. The put-upon son, his patience exhausted by the mere fact of my continued existence. My longevity was an inconvenience. My care was a theft. He straightened up, his decision made. "I need to talk to that doctor myself. Get the real story. This can't be the only option." He turned slightly, ready to go in search of Dr. Lowell, to attempt to reassert his authority as the son, the next of kin, the heir. That was the moment, when his attention was shifting away, when he thought the audience was absent and the play was over. I opened my eyes. I did not move my head. I simply directed my gaze upward, to where he stood beside the bed. I focused on his profile as he turned back toward the door. He must have felt it, a change in the energy of the room, a presence where there had been only an object. His head swung slowly back toward me. Our eyes met. His were wide, the pupils dilating in a swift, animal reflex of shock. His breath caught audibly. Every muscle in his face seemed to freeze mid-expression, a confusing mix of annoyance, calculation, and sudden, dawning horror. For a count of 5, there was absolute silence. The monitor beeped. A cart rattled in the distant hall. I did not blink. I held his gaze with a calm, unwavering focus. All the pretense, all the weakness was gone from my eyes. What was left was clarity and judgment. He took an involuntary step back, his hip bumping into the bedside table, making the water pitcher tremble. "You're—" he started, but the sentence died. He was trying to reconcile the conscious intelligence in my eyes with the helpless form in the bed. The cognitive dissonance was paralyzing. "I am awake, Marcus," I said. My voice was not the dry rasp of before. It was quiet, but it was clear, firm, and utterly controlled. "I have been awake for some time." His mouth opened, then closed. Color drained from his face, leaving a sickly pallor. The arrogant son, the impatient heir, vanished. In his place was a boy caught in a terrible, revealing act. How long?" "Long enough," I replied. I did not elaborate. Let him wonder. Let him replay every word he had spoken in this room. Long enough to hear you ask the doctor if I would last until Christmas. Long enough to hear you discuss selling my house to cover your lease. Long enough to understand your plans for my estate. Each statement was a precise surgical cut. I watched them land. He flinched as if physically struck. His hand went to his stomach. You heard that? The question was a stunned whisper. I heard everything. I continued to look at him, my head still on the pillow. I did not need to sit up. The power was not in my posture, but in my knowledge. And I took appropriate steps. The implications began to crash over him. The nurse, the lawyer, the power of attorney, the financial silence. It had not been a bizarre bureaucratic snafu. It had been a coordinated counterattack launched from this very bed while he thought I was fatting away. His eyes darted around the room, as if looking for the hidden cameras, the witnesses, the trap. They finally settled back on me, filled with a new, terrible understanding. The dynamic between us had irrevocably shifted. He was no longer the overseer of my decline. He was the exposed supplicant. I had opened my eyes, and in doing so, I had closed the door on his future. The quiet in the room was no longer the silence of sickness, but the silence of a verdict delivered. The performance was over. The reckoning had begun. He stood frozen, his hand still gripping the bed rail as if it were the only solid thing in a tilting world. The shock in his eyes began to curdle into something else, defiance, then a frantic, scrambling calculation. You don't understand, he blurted, the words tumbling out. The pressure I've been under, the debts. You have no idea what it's like. I was just managing the situation for both of us. I continued to look at him, letting his excuses hang in the air, worthless. I understand perfectly. You saw my life as a solution to your problems. You saw my death as a convenience. That's not true. His voice rose, then cracked. He glanced nervously at the door, remembering the need for quiet. I was worried about you. I am worried. This nurse, this lawyer, they're taking advantage of you while you're vulnerable. They are following my instructions, I said, each word deliberate. Instructions I gave because of what I heard you say. Let me be clear, Marcus, so there is no misunderstanding. I have executed a new last will and testament. It revokes all previous versions. You are no longer my heir. The blood drained from his face completely. You can't do that. It is already done. It has been filed with the court. My estate will be placed in a trust for my care. Upon my death, any remaining assets will be donated to the Fairview Community Women's Shelter. You will receive one item, the photograph of your father and me from the mantel. He shook his head slowly, a mechanical denial. No, that's not right. That's my house, my money, you can't just give it away. It was never your house, I said, my voice cold and flat. It is my house, and the money you were counting on is no longer accessible to you. Using the power of attorney granted to Nurse Johnson, my liquid assets have been moved to new accounts at a different bank. The deed to the house is in my lawyer's safe. A notice has been placed on the title preventing any liens or loans. The financial windfall you were anticipating does not exist. The full scope of the disaster unfolded in his expression. It was a physical unraveling. His shoulders slumped. His arrogant posture collapsed. He was looking at the total, meticulous demolition of his future. Why? The word was a raw scrape of sound. Why would you do this to me? I'm your son. You stopped being my son when you started counting the days until my death, I replied, no tremor in my voice. You became a creditor, a hostile one. I am simply settling my accounts. You provided the motivation. I have provided the consequence. The defiance finally broke. The calculation gave way to pure, unvarnished panic. He took a stumbling step forward, his hands coming up in a pleading gesture. Mom, please, you have to listen. I made a mistake. I was stressed. I didn't mean it. I'll make it up to you. I'll take care of you. Just tear up those papers. We can go back to how things were. How things were, I repeated. With you waiting for me to die? No, Marcus, there is no going back. The path you chose has only one destination, exclusion. He fell to his knees beside the bed. The impact was dull on the linoleum floor. He grasped the side rail, his knuckles white. Tears, real or strategic, welled in his eyes. "I'm begging you, please don't do this. I have nothing. I'll lose my apartment, my car, everything. You'll ruin me." I looked down at him, this man on his knees, and felt nothing but a distant, cold satisfaction. This was the reckoning, not with shouts but with whispers, not with violence but with paperwork. "You ruined yourself. I am merely removing the life raft you thought you had. You are a grown man. Your debts are your own. Your choices are your own. You will have to solve your problems without cannibalizing my life." "What am I supposed to do?" he cried, his forehead resting against the cold metal rail. "That is no longer my concern," I said. "However, if you wish to ever have any form of relationship with me again, a relationship with no financial component whatsoever, you will begin by getting professional help for your entitlement and your financial recklessness. You will find and keep a job. You will live within your means. You will not contact me for money, ever. If, after a year of sustained, independent effort, you wish to speak to me as a son and not as a beneficiary, we may discuss it." He looked up, his face streaked and desperate. "That's impossible. You're sentencing me to nothing." "I am offering you a chance to become something other than a vulture," I said. "It is more than you offered me. The choice is yours." I reached for the call button on the bed rail, my movement slow but purposeful. I pressed it. A soft light illuminated above the door. "What are you doing?" he asked, scrambling to his feet, wiping his face hastily. "Our conversation is over," I said. "You will leave now. Nurse Johnson will escort you out. If you attempt to contact me before I decide to contact you, I will pursue a restraining order. Do you understand?" The door opened. Rita stood there, a solid, impassive presence. She looked from my calm face to Marcus's shattered one. She said nothing, simply held the door open, her gaze fixed on him. Marcus looked at me, a final, wild search for mercy in my eyes. He found none. Only the firm, unyielding resolution of a woman who had rebuilt her walls and sealed the gates. He straightened his shirt, a pathetic attempt to salvage dignity, and walked unsteadily toward the door. He paused on the threshold, but did not look back. Then he was gone, his footsteps echoing away into silence. Rita stepped in and closed the door. She didn't ask if I was all right. She could see that I was, perhaps for the first time in years. "It's done," she said simply. "It's done," I echoed. The cold fury had burned itself out, leaving behind a clean, quiet emptiness. The scales were balanced. The revenge was complete. There was no triumph, only a profound and final stillness. The son who had waited for a death was gone. The mother who had engineered his departure was, at last, at peace. 3 days later, on the morning of Christmas Eve, Dr. Lowell signed my discharge papers. My recovery was not complete. I would need weeks of rest and outpatient therapy, but the pneumonia had cleared. My heart, both the physical and metaphorical one, was stable. Rita had arranged everything. She had taken a few days of personal leave to help me transition home. The discharge process was quiet. Lawrence Jenkins had handled the billing directly with the hospital, using the new accounts. There were no calls from Marcus. I had instructed Lawrence to inform him, through formal letter, that I was being discharged and that any further communication should go through his office. The silence from that quarter was absolute, and I preferred it that way. Rita helped me into the wheelchair, then bundled me into her sensible sedan parked at the entrance. The cold December air was sharp and clean, scented with distant wood smoke. It was the first real air I had breathed in weeks that wasn't filtered through antiseptic. I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling the weak winter sun on my face through the windshield. The drive to my house was familiar and strange. The streets, the bare trees, the houses decorated with lights and wreaths, they were the same, but I was not. I was returning as someone who had fought a war and secured her borders. Rita pulled into the driveway. The house looked exactly as I had left it, tidy, the porch light on, the fern on the steps slightly frost-tipped but alive. She came around, offered her arm, and I leaned on it, walking slowly to the front door. My keys were in my purse, but Rita had her set. She unlocked it and pushed the door open. The smell of home enveloped me, a mix of lemon polish, old books, and the faint, comforting scent of the cedar lining in the hall closet. It was quiet and warm. Rita had been in earlier to turn up the heat and air the rooms. I stood in the foyer, taking it in. Everything was in its place. The bookshelves Robert built, the rug we bought on a trip decades ago, the photograph on the mantel. It was all here. It was all still mine. "Let's get you settled," Rita said, her voice practical. She guided me to my favorite armchair in the living room, the one that looked out onto the garden. She had already set up a small table beside it with a lamp, a phone, my medications, and a glass of water. A blanket was folded over the arm. I sank into the chair. The familiarity of the fabric, the support of the cushion, was a profound relief. It was a different kind of strength than the one I had needed in the hospital. This was the strength of sanctuary. Rita busied herself in the kitchen. I heard the kettle whistle, the clink of cups. She returned with a tray bearing 2 mugs of tea and a plate of simple toast. She set it on the table and took the sofa across from me. For a while, we sat in comfortable silence, drinking our tea. The only sound was the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the distant tick of the hall clock. "He won't bother you," Rita said after a time, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. "I know," I replied. "He has nothing to gain now, and the legal barriers are high. His pride won't let him come back just to be rejected again. He will either sink or swim on his own. That is no longer my burden to carry." She nodded, sipping her tea. "Jenkins called this morning, wanted to wish you a peaceful holiday. He said everything is locked down tight." "Good." We finished our tea. Rita cleared the tray. As evening began to fall, she turned on the lamp beside me and then, with a small smile, plugged in the lights of the small Christmas tree in the corner. I hadn't even noticed it. It was a modest artificial tree, the one I used every year. She must have brought it out from the basement and decorated it simply. Soft, multicolored lights bloomed in the dim room, reflecting in the window glass. They cast a gentle, peaceful glow. "It's not much," Rita said. "It's perfect," I said, and I meant it. She stayed for a simple supper of soup and bread. We did not speak of hospitals or sons or legal documents. We talked about her mother in Georgia, about a book I had been meaning to read, about the garden and what I might plant in the spring. It was ordinary talk. It was the talk of life moving forward. When she left, promising to return the next day to check on me, I was alone in my quiet house. The peace was not an absence of sound, but a presence of security. I had taken back control. I had protected what was mine. The vengeance was not in his poverty, but in my peace. He was adrift in the consequences of his own choices. I was here, anchored in the life I had built and defended. I looked at the twinkling lights of the tree, their colors soft against the dark window. Outside, a few snowflakes began to drift down, catching the glow from the porch light. It was Christmas Eve. I was home. The question of whether I would last until Christmas had been answered not by my death but by my return. I had lasted. I would continue to last. On my own terms, in my own home, with the quiet strength of a woman who had looked into the abyss of betrayal and had calmly, methodically, built a bridge across it to safer ground. I pulled the blanket over my legs, leaned my head back against the chair, and watched the snow fall. There was no joy, no celebration. There was only a deep, quiet satisfaction and a fatigue that promised restful sleep. The fight was over. The peace, hard won and complete, was mine.